Hi, my name is Courtney Tomer, and today I will be presenting on acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT therapy as it is called. ACT therapy was created in 1986 by Steve Hayes, PhD. He utilized relational frame theory as a foundation for ACT therapy. Relational frame theory focuses on how the human language utilizes relating of one concept to another to form a foundation for all cognitions that humans have. And by cognitions, we mean feelings and thoughts as they relate to an experience. ACT therapy uses mindfulness as an approach to emphasize accepting thoughts and feelings not necessarily as problems, but rather just harmless events that are based in context and that can cause our brains to dictate experiences as good or bad. Another main focus of ACT therapy is by creating a meaningful life while accepting pain that is inevitable. In ACT therapy, we focus not so much on symptom reduction, but rather how do we help somebody to go through the pain of life and come out the other side of it by being able to choose actions and behaviors that go towards their values and not away from their values. In ACT therapy, therapists can choose to create an individualized mindfulness for each client, as ACT therapy does not have any formal manuals or guides to dictate what must be done in the type of therapy, as is with many other kinds of therapy, such as DBT or CBT. The 6 core processes of ACT include acceptance, being present, identifying values, committing to actions, viewing self as context, and engaging in diffusion of thinking and feelings. These processes interact together in any order of the therapist and client's choosing to help the client to develop greater psychological flexibility, which will lead them to making choices in behavior and experiences that lead them towards values that they have previously identified. The opposite of flexibility in ACT is inflexibility, in which the client feels stuck and avoids experiences that lead to cognitions being fused to negativity and are detrimental to the client's process of healing and moving forward. ACT therapy is a very challenging kind of therapy to define, but here I've broken down into 3 simple steps that really exemplify ACT therapy at its core. Using the acronym of ACT, we'll first look at A, or accept your reactions and be present. This is just noticing where we are and how we are doing in our environment. C is choose a direction that validates values. It's not so much of a focus about what behavior we choose, as long as it's moving us towards our responsibilities and our chosen values, and whether we're making progress in that way instead of feeling stuck. T, take action in meaningful behaviors. This really is doing those plans that we've made in A and C and using those plans to engage in meaningful behaviors that move us toward our values and move us toward that progress. ACT therapy has been empirically validated as a treatment by the American Psychological Association. It has also been validated as evidence-based by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Association. ACT therapy can be used for many different presenting issues, as well as clients of various backgrounds. Several of the issues it can address are chronic pain, depression, psychosis, workplace stress, eating disorders, self-harm, epilepsy control, diabetes management, and many, many more. As you can see, it is a useful therapy for many different things, as it is easily individualized, as well as very much up to the therapist to determine what is going to be most beneficial for the client or clients. ACT can be used in a variety of clinical populations, including individuals, couples, and groups. It can also be done in brief, medium-term, and long-term therapy. It is highly individualized to be beneficial to the client and not be held by a certain standard in a manual or a set of policies and procedures. To measure effectiveness of ACT, the Acceptance and Action Questionnaire has been suggested by the creator of the therapy modality, Stephen C. Hayes. It is a measure in which the client will answer questions and then they are scored, and that score associates them with a high level of depression, anxiety, burnout, or any number of other presenting problems. For the role play, I'll be interviewing Ryan, who is a 31-year-old male who is experiencing burnout through his job as a middle school music teacher and various family responsibilities that are overwhelming to him and have led him to lose a sense of enjoyment in activities that he once found pleasure in. ACT is appropriate for this client because he is currently being consumed by feelings of failure and inadequacy that are preventing him from engaging in a meaningful life. He's also experiencing stress and challenges that are kind of a part of the territory of his work, but he is struggling to manage them in a healthy way. So this week we're going to talk a lot about our thoughts and our feelings and how we can try to approach them maybe in a better way, not change them or stop them from happening, but just approach them and be a little more accepting of them. So I want to do an exercise right now to kind of gauge where you are as far as your thoughts and feelings kind of consuming your ability to see the world. So if you'll take your hand and put it out in front of you, I want you to kind of look at your hand for just a few seconds. Just notice anything that's special about your hand or unique about your hand.
It's a hand.
Now I want you to see this hand as your thoughts and feelings. Okay, so think of some thoughts you had this week or some feelings you had this week. Kind of label your hand with those things. Now I want you to slowly raise your hand towards your face until it covers your eyes.
Okay.
While you're doing this, really notice those thoughts and feelings that your hand represents. What can you see now that your hand is in front of your face?
Now all I can see is nothing. All I can see is my hand.
All you can see are those thoughts and your feelings. Okay. You can put your hand down. Does that represent kind of what happened this week with your thoughts and feelings?
I think so.
So it sounds like you became very consumed by them.
Yes. I tend, whether it's positive or negative, I tend to find one thing and fixate on that.
Okay. Can you maybe be more specific on one thought that really consumed you this week or repeated itself?
I am a terrible teacher because no one did the assignment I gave them.
Okay. So you're having kind of feelings and thoughts of you aren't able to do your job because your kids aren't succeeding, is what it sounds like. Okay. So in doing this exercise and kind of looking at our thoughts and feelings, in the next few weeks, we're going to talk about what we call hooked and unhooked thoughts. So hooked thoughts are ones that kind of keep us stuck. They hook us in. They lead us away from our goals and our values, which we'll talk a little more about next week of defining those goals and values. And those hooked thoughts really don't go away. We just keep running through them in our mind over and over and over again. Unhooked thoughts, on the contrary, are ones that maybe just flow through our mind freely. They don't get stuck. They don't have to be positive or negative. They just tend to come, we accept them, and we move on. So we'll talk more about those next week, and we'll start defining those. But this week, I really want to focus on just looking at our thoughts in a maybe more objective view instead of a consuming view. So that exercise we just did, it was okay when you were down here with your hands, but then as soon as you went up, you really couldn't see anything. So some phrases we like to use to kind of demonstrate a little further is using the words I am and I am having. Two kind of different statements. So I want to run through some examples and see which statement sounds maybe less stressful or feels less stressful to you.
Okay.
So give me one specific thought you had this week.
Nobody likes me at work because I make the kids follow the rules.
Okay. So nobody likes me at work because I make the kids follow the rules, is what I heard. Okay. So instead of saying nobody likes me, let me back up. What feeling does that emote in you?
Loneliness.
Loneliness. So instead of saying I am lonely, I am not liked, I do not have successful students, I want you to try rephrasing it and saying, I am having the feeling of loneliness. I am having the feeling of not being liked. I am having the feeling of my kids not being successful. And let's run through that and let's see kind of which feels better.
Okay.
So I want you to repeat after me for the first one, then we'll do another one.
Okay.
So I am not liked by my peers.
I am not liked by my peers.
I do not have successful students.
I do not have successful students.
I am lonely.
I am lonely.
Those are pretty heavy statements. Now I want you to repeat after me and we're going to change a little bit. I am having the feeling of being unliked.
I am having the feeling of being unliked.
I am having the thought of not having successful students.
I am having the thought of not having successful students.
I am having the feeling of loneliness.
I am having the feeling of loneliness.
Which of those two statements feels less stressful to you?
The second one.
Can you put some more words to that for me?
I feel like it gives me some wiggle room. Because
Okay.
To me, like, judgment is like permanent, and so if I can be proven wrong in my judgments, that can help me.
Okay. So you're embodying less of these feelings. They're more turning into just thoughts that you're having, feeling that you're having. You're attached to them because they're your thoughts and feelings, but they are not you. You are just having them. They're just occurring. They're harmless if we acknowledge them and move on. They're only harmful when we acknowledge them and we don't move on and we get stuck by them. Okay. So this week, part of your homework will be that of when you are having these thoughts, instead of saying, I am a failure, I am this, I want you to try saying, I am having the thought of being a failure. And see if that distance helps you to kind of move past that with your language versus getting stuck. Does that make sense as part of your homework?
Yes.
Okay. Because I think that'll really pull you out of being so focused on these words, and instead they're just happening. Things happen. So part of ACT therapy, like we talked about last week, and I just wanted to reemphasize, is we don't see thoughts and feelings necessarily as a problem. We see them just as an occurring event. And we aren't going to try and change your thinking per se. We're not going to try and stop those thoughts from happening, but we're going to practice acknowledging those thoughts, choosing an action that corresponds to our values, and then committing to that action and acting it out. That's why it's called ACT therapy. So in the next couple weeks, we'll talk more about that, but our focus is really acknowledging those thoughts and then trying to move on from them. So do you have any questions about that?
No.
Okay. So another emphasis we talked a little bit about last week, but I wanted to expand upon, was using some mindfulness techniques. What does the word mindful bring to you?
It brings to mind thoughts of like awareness.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really common word used with it, is awareness. I like the word acknowledgement as well, because we're looking at ourselves and how we're interacting with our environment, how we're interacting with ourselves, and we're seeing whether it's positive or negative, whether we're, it's kind of on that hamster wheel repeating ourselves, or we are just able to go through our lives and live a really rich and meaningful life. So with mindfulness, each week I want to practice a different kind of mindfulness with you. And these are going to be very, very simple. Do you think you have maybe 5 minutes in your day you could do a mindfulness exercise?
Probably.
Okay. What time of day could you commit to doing that mindfulness?
Probably in the morning.
Okay. So all of these exercises that we're going to practice one today, but all of these, you can make them really long, you can make them really short. They can all totally be done in 5 minutes. And they can be at any time of day. So even if you forget in the morning, you could absolutely do them a little bit later on. Or you have children at school that are your students, so you could even have them do them with you, and kind of share the knowledge a little bit. So the one we're going to practice today really is going to emphasize acknowledging those thoughts, being aware of those thoughts we're having and the feelings we're having, kind of the same way we did the hand metaphor. And we're going to practice just acknowledging, noticing them, labeling them, and then letting them go. And then we're also going to notice some that maybe get stuck. And that's okay, because we're going to talk a lot about more of those next week, about the ones that get stuck. So for this mindfulness exercise, I want you to sit in a comfortable position. You're welcome to close your eyes.